KZMB All Zombie Radio.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Finding Found. My mic screwed up. The show in which we may or may not find things that may or may not have been found or found not on an episode of NBC's hit television series. And wow, found. That's it. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm solo today, and for that I apologize, but Takira is literally moving right now. So she cannot be here. So we're just going to have to deal with it. And we will hopefully see her next week. I hope. So hopefully she'll be here next week with us to cover episode 16. But as of right now, episode 15 is what we're on. All right, entitled Missing While Seeking Asylum, the 15th episode of season 2 of Found. I had it mislabeled on everything. So it's fine now. But that's why I'm a minute late, because I had to figure it out. Yeah. I okay, bear with me. Hey, Marcus. I literally just finished the episode a second ago. Um, because my schedule was different today than it is normally. Normally I watch it before I go to work. That way I have time to like process. I have to say, there were some my usual gripes, right? Like you cannot expect me to believe that like what 30 something years have passed and everyone was found. It's just not very likely, you know what I mean? But other than my usual gripes of like not very realistic, go darker, you're on later than SVU, it should be darker. Other than that, this episode was great in my opinion. I cried like 4 separate times. It was like they would set you up for tears and then they would go to a commercial break. And then they would set you up for tears again and then they'd go to another commercial break. And that just kept happening. So, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty good. I'm going to give it an okay rating. Um with that said, let's go ahead and jump in to the deets of this episode, which are all right, as follows. This episode was written by Michael G. Peterson and directed by Michael Schultz. Again, these are people typically that are usually like a repeat writing directing team from season 1. Michael Schultz and Michael G. Peterson also worked on episode 11 of season 1 entitled Missing While Interracial. I don't have the numbers yet for ratings. I don't know. Now we can take a look at the ratings from the weeks prior. I don't want to say 2 weeks prior because we took a break again. But episode 13 did 2.29. Episode 14 did 2.12. Hopefully this one's on the upswing. I'm not really sure. Overall, it would appear that the numbers are just generally lower than last season. I hope we can stick with it. I hope we can keep going. Again, I feel like if they would go darker, it might yield better results, but it's not the vibe they're pushing for. All right. So, episode 15, Missing While Seeking Asylum, was kind of an interesting one. For the first time, we actually had 7 missing people that were being located. Now, this does tie back to the storyline with Sir, where Sir is like, hey, heavy boots, there's more to your family, and your legacy is mine. Which is weird. It's a weird thing to say. But he did that. He also lured him to a high school to do it. I don't know. Anyway, the whole thing is that Sir's not dropping this. There is still something to it. And there's a couple other pieces of drama that occur amongst the episode. We have fewer flashbacks than we've had in previous episodes. Honestly, I'm a little bit thankful for that. The back and forth is kind of a bit much, so I'm a little bit thankful for that. But we'll go ahead and we will get started. So, Trent is running along a running path with his girlfriend who nobody likes. Um, and he's like kind of zoning out. He's replaying the words of Sir in his head about like Lawrence Johnson. He was 5 years old. He went missing 39 years ago. His best friend was his brother Adam. Okay, so like we're getting this replay. It's Trent's father was the lead detective. Sir is trying to insinuate that something happened with Trent's dad. We don't know 100% if that's true. But, you know, we're getting the vibe that it is. I don't know. I couldn't say one way or the other. I don't think they haven't built Trent's dad to be like a bad guy. He just seems like a cop. You know what I mean? So like take it or leave it. He could be a bad guy, he could not be a bad guy. He just seems kind of a stickler for the book, which is why it's like the story is surprising, but we'll get into it. Okay, so then, Heavy Boots' girlfriend that nobody likes is like, "Are you okay? You were in your own world there. You want to talk about it?" And then proceeds to try to manipulate him into telling her what he was thinking about, which I didn't love. It's like, I don't like you already. No, I really don't like you. And now you made me dislike the writers because they didn't go with my idea about you. But anyway, we'll move on. Um, and I apologize, guys. I still got like a little bit of a cold, so I'm just kind of fighting some sniffles. Okay, so she uncovers that it's about Sir because she's a detective. She's a genius. Um, anyway, there's this whole weird interchange between the two of them. Trent is like, I don't really want to talk about it. That should be enough if a grown man is telling you, I don't really want to talk about it. I mean, if anybody is using their voice to tell you, I don't want to talk about this, then like just respect that boundary and say, like, okay, cool. We don't need to talk about it. You two have not been dating that long. So don't push it. But she pushes it anyway, because this is the kind of person that she is. And that's why we don't like her. Um, but there's this really weird interchange. She's like talking about how like I'll clear my schedule if you want to talk, which is like fine to say. But Trent says, I wouldn't dream of messing with your schedule, which is also weird. Then she like feigns that she's mad at him, but then she's like, not really. And then she's like, but back to Sir. Not you doing that. Frankie, lay down. Excuse me. But back to Sir, there's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. And he's like, I'm listening. And she says, you first. He just said he didn't want to talk about it. What is wrong with you? And then it's like, okay, well, we should both just get back to work. So, anyway, they leave. Okay. They leave the park. I don't know. I don't care. Their relationship is damaged, and I do not care because I do not care for either. What? Trent's fine, but I really don't care for her. Then we get a scene of Zeke and Lacey. There's a little bit of like a side story here with Zeke and Lacey this episode. I'm gonna roll right through it. I'm gonna wrap it up really quickly because it's a big deal, but it's like in terms of like the episode is actually quite small. So Lacey is in her feelings, like mega butthurt over the Shelly situation. Okay. And we don't even know anything else about Shelly other than she showed up with a bottle of champagne and Lacey got weird and left. Okay. And it's not like Zeke wanted her to leave. She just assumed that he did. Now, could Zeke have been like, no, 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 no. He tried, but like, what are you gonna do? Like, no, this chick doesn't mean anything to me. Just stay. Like, that would have been weird. You know what I mean? So like, it's just like kind of an awkward thing. But anyway, so Lacey is still living at Zeke's house, and she's up late at night studying. Zeke comes in, he's got like a whole tray of like snacks and stuff for her, which is like so sweet. And she's like, "Hey, I thought you were still working on like a drone," because he was like working on a project. And he goes, "Well, that's how I know that you need nourishment because that was done 2 hours ago." And she's like, "Why aren't you asleep?" And he was like, "Oh, because like I wanted to help you get through your late night studying, I brought you food. And then she gets, again, she's mega butthurt and super in her feelings. So she's like, "Oh, I'm messing up your sleep," which is just like, that is something you would say if you were like, "No, I'm not going to tell you that I like you, but like, you tell me. Tell me that you like me." Um, so I'm going to create situations in which you have to express that you want my affection and attention. That's exactly what she does here. She's like, "I'm really messing up with your sleep. You really shouldn't have put together this snack." And he's like, "It's not that big of a deal. It's just a snack." And then she's like, "Except it isn't, you know? Like, why am I still living in your house?" And he's like, "Oh, okay." And she just goes on to say, like, "There's an apartment waiting for her. It's been waiting for her. Like, I'm just screwing up your vibe," is what she says. And he's like, "You don't have to worry about my vibe. Not a thing." And then she's like, "If I wasn't here, you and your friend Shelly." And he's like, "Well, Shelly and I are not a thing." And she's like, "Oh, well, I just my point is just I want to say thank you for everything you've done. And I think it's time that I leave." Okay. A little bit weird. Okay. So that's what we get. We get a scene later in the episode in which Don and Zeke are waiting for an algorithm to run through a videotape to amplify the videotape footage. I don't think that's a thing, but it's better than them just yelling enhance on one photo over and over again. So I guess we'll take it. And so they have, him and Don have this moment. They talk a little bit. There's a suitcase in the corner. Don's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Well, Lacey is planning on moving out." And Don's trying to kind of like get him to state that he's sad about it or that he wants Lacey to stay or whatever. So he's kind of pushing him and he's like, "Well, like how do you feel about her leaving?" And he does finally get him to say like, "I want her to stay. She makes my life better. She's a light in a dark world," like that kind of thing. "She brightens up my world. She makes things possible." And Don is like smiling cuz he knows what that's like cuz he has that with Ethan, he says, but does he though? Cuz that's his therapist. But anyway, Um, he, so it's like it's kind of a sweet moment. It just goes to like kind of showcase the difference between season one, their dynamic, and now season two. Because in season one, Donna and Zeke are enemies, and so to see this kind of friendship in season two is actually really sweet. So we get to see that, and that's kind of it for that scene. That scene then quickly ends because there's like progress made on the case, and then the last scene, one of the last scenes of so the last scene of the episode? The last scene of the episode? Um, Zeke is saying goodbye to Lacey. She is going to leave. She packed her bag, she's ready to go. And he's saying goodbye. And there's a lot of like hemming and hawing. There's a lot of like, well, I guess this is it. Like just a lot of that. And so finally she says, "Okay, I guess this is it," for like the second time. And she's about to leave. And Zeke finally reaches out and grabs her and kisses her. And so we finally get to see this like romantic progression that we've been waiting for. It finally was played out. So we don't know what's going to happen there. Screen goes to black, the credits roll, but very very cute. So that's pretty much it for that little storyline. Really big story progression, very small actual aspect of the episode. So I just wanted to kind of roll through it now, and now we'll get back into the other storyline because I kind of want to go through the main storyline. Once we hit Jamie and Margaret's, I think I'll just roll through the rest of that too, and then we'll wrap up the rest of the case. So um Trent goes to Gabby and after his run and this weird interaction with this girlfriend that nobody likes. And he's like, "Hey, I'm like really struggling with this. I cannot get these kids out of my head. Like the idea that like my dad had anything to do with this is really upsetting. Like what happened to these kids? Like why did nobody look for them? Like what's the situation?" And so Gabby's kind of like, if they were adults, like they would have come forward by now. But he's like, even if they're dead, like their families still deserve closure. Like I need closure. If my dad did wrong, then I need to find out so that I can bring him to justice. And um he hires M&A to work this case with him. There's two conditions that Gabby has. She said she wants no communication with Sir, and that rule stays in place. And then she says two is that there's full transparency, not just with her, but her entire team. He agrees, becomes a client of M&A, and they move forward. Um, she does give the warning that, like, if Sir is right about what is happening here or happened here, I think you will maybe live to regret this. So she's going in kind of wary, and we don't know. But okay. Then we get a flashback scene. It's really brief. We get a flashback scene. It's Margaret's husband. I cannot remember his name. Um he's like going through, they're getting ready for like the search party kind of stuff to start, and they're hosting it at their house. Just kind of interesting because I think a lot of the time you do that at like a community center or like a focal point, and it typically is because you're bringing in volunteers and they're people you don't know, and also your child was just taken. So this happening at their house to me feels very weird, super unusual. Your command center would be somewhere else. It would not be in your own home. But I don't know if this is like they are doing this, they're coordinating the volunteers only. There's no like, typically this is when like charities that do this kind of work come in. There would be like the police department would be involved. They would be manning this. They would be getting people involved with your help. Like, so this is kind of a weird dynamic. I'm not really sure what's happening here, but he's going through like the list of all the stuff. He's like, he's got bagels, pastries, coffee, the flyers are printed. And then he's like, Margaret, where are the napkins? And she's like, I don't know, because she is busy preparing her own list. Hey, Durga. She's busy preparing her own list of suspects. On the suspect list, we have Helena, Janet, Robert, the grandparents, and also, I'll let you know, one Francine, I believe is her name. Some random lady that we see later. So he, like, her husband is like really upset with Margaret. He's like, what, how, like, kind of like, how can you put this together? And she's like, they all had access to the house, which I'm like, how many people did you know that had a key to your house? Because that list was not short. Thank you, Durga. I was just saying this was a really good episode. I have my like normal gripes. Like, I wish it had gone darker because, that's always my gripe with this. But this one was really great otherwise. I really enjoyed this. The twist was like good enough that it like got me. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. To be fair, from the beginning of the episode, I wasn't quite sure how this was going to play out. Like, I was starting to think that maybe someone, like maybe the parents had worked with someone to kidnap quote unquote their kids. Like, I'm using that they were kidnapped, but I'm saying like that to quote unquote kidnap them in order for them to be able to stay in America. Like, I thought at first like maybe that was what was going on. So this storyline was good enough that it tripped me up. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I liked it. I did genuinely like it. And this is the first one in a while where I got done and I was like, the episode ended. I was like, what? There were many times during the episode where I audibly said out loud, like, come on, man. Or like, I don't trust that person or whatever. It was nice. This was nice. I enjoyed it. Great writing, directing team. So, back to what I was talking about. How many people in your life have a key to your house? I don't think it's 20. If it is 20, I'm so sorry. I don't think it should be 20. I think you should check that. I think 20 is too many. So, anyway, Margaret proceeds to say to her husband, like, hey, just hear me out. Just hear me out. Hey, India, my day is going great. I'm so glad you're here. Two people. See, Durga, that two people seems appropriate. Two people having your house key seems appropriate. That long list of people having access to a key to your house seems extremely long. Like, okay, Oh, you're gonna watch it now. Okay, you're in for a treat, India. I think you're really gonna enjoy it. It was a good one. It was a really good one. But thank you for stopping by. Thank you. That's so sweet of you. All right. So, okay. So it just seemed weird. It's a lot of people to have access to your house. But she just repeats, like, hey, the train disappeared after he was gone. So I think that someone had a key and could get in. And her husband's like, no, we don't know that. Which I'm like, I'm sorry, but if my kid went missing, I'm 100% on board with Margaret in this episode. If my kid went missing, come hell or high water, I'm going to do everything I can to find my kid. Everything. If that makes people feel uncomfortable, that's not my problem. That's your problem. Okay. Like, this really pissed me off. This really pissed me off. The fact that he's worried about what other people are going to think, your child is missing, dude. Who cares what other people think? One. Two, your wife is like on the brink of a mental breakdown, and you're like, just calm down. Shut up, you're an idiot. I get that you could understand, like, you could think like maybe she's misremembering seeing the train. Fair point. Her husband is so sketchy to me, Durga. So sketchy to me. So sketchy. I just don't trust him. I just don't trust him. Okay. Um, so she's just trying to reiterate, like, I did see it in his room. Nothing worse when you're like trying to tell somebody something and they're like, maybe you're misremembering. That's I hate that. But I could understand. Like, there's a lot going on. Anyway, he says, like, hide this list because half of the people on it are coming here right now to volunteer. I think maybe you want to reevaluate who you have coming to your house right now. Just my opinion. India says, I think the ex husband is involved in it, and this episode further convinces my theory of Hugh and Trent being brothers. Just the way he talks to Heavy Boots seems very similar to how Hugh talks to Christian. That's a really interesting theory, India. Oh, that's a really interesting theory. Okay. I'm maybe on board with that. I may be on board with that. Yeah, because do we ever know? Oh, India, did you just blow this case wide open? Because I don't know that we ever know who Hugh's father was, and if his mom was kind of like out there hooking, maybe they are brothers. Okay, Durga, 100%, 100%. Francine is sus. Something's on with Francine. Something is on with Francine. Durga says, my first thought was, are you sleeping with Francine and are you all playing house with Jamie? Something weird is up with the two of them. I did not like the vibe that was going on there. Durga says, I definitely think they're brothers. The keyword is legacy. I love this. Ugh, I love you guys. You're so smart. I love that. That's so good. Okay. So, you know, Dad's like, we're all looking for Jamie. They're not the enemy. Except, I'm sorry, the police believe that someone you knew took your son. So, frankly, everyone is the enemy. And the fact that you are so deluded and worried about what other people think about you that you refuse to be like, you know what? No, I'm going to actually have like a critical eye here and take a look at the people close to me to ensure that they did not take my son is freaking ridiculous. This dad pisses me off so much. So we get that. The other scene that we get, the other little flashback scene that we get is of Margaret and her husband again. Now it's like during this weird search party thing in which like no one is searching. They're just all at their house. I don't know what's happening there. But some woman is just standing there trying to compare the fact that she lost her son in a store one time with the fact that her son is missing, which is just like so tone deaf. It's so awkward and tone deaf. It's so stupid. Um, India says maybe because Sir is so insistent on destroying the Trent legacy and thought dad was sleeping with someone and that person could have taken him. And two, I still don't trust Heather at all. Durga says Heather is deaf, the sister. That was all code. I don't know. That really threw me for a loop. I was pissed. I was pissed when I saw her. We'll get to it though. We'll get to that. Okay. All right. So Margaret is being talked at by this woman who was just like incessantly telling her, like, I can't imagine what you're going through, Margaret, except this one time my son got lost at the store. And you're like, bro, really? Read the room. Yes, they were chilling like it was a party. What was happening there? I thought this was supposed to be a search party. Again, why is it at your home? There are so many things wrong with this scene. Um, it's like the dad is finally like, oh yes, finally, my son's out of the way. I can party like I wanted to, even though I still have two other kids. But Margaret's like scanning the room and trying to pay attention to everyone. And I okay, wait. Okay. All right. Hold on. I'm gonna go back to the comments and we'll come back to it. Durga says the man, the way Hugh sighed when he first saw her and she was smug AF, 100%. And he says, wait, but Heather can't be the sister and Trent is the half brother. It would be a twisted triangle. You know what? That family's jacked. They're jacked up, India. I don't know. Maybe she's into that. Maybe she's into her brother. And Hugh certainly won't sleep with her because he's disgusted by her mere presence. Because the look on his face when he saw her was like, he looked so pissed because he thought it was going to be Gabby and it really wasn't. Okay, I'm moving back to the Margaret thing. Margaret's watching some people. She sees her husband having what I would argue is a very flirty conversation at a search party for your son who's missing. And good old Francine here, who's dressed like a slut, also for a search party. What are you wearing, Francine? A green silk dress? Are you kidding me? Are you okay? You're looking for a small child. What are you doing? Aren't you guys supposed to be like out hitting the streets canvassing? Why are you wearing that? Anyway, Margaret sees her passing her key, a key that she's borrowed to their house, over to Dad. And Margaret storms over there and she's like, hey, the police said that most likely someone we know took our son. Interesting you have a key. And it's kind of this weird moment where like Francine's like, well, I never. Like you have any right to act like that in someone else's house. Well, you were just talking to her man, giving back the key that you borrowed in a green slutty dress because you're clearly here to look for something else and it's not a kid. Okay. That's the end of that scene, really. Margaret kind of like flips. That's really it. I'm mad about it, obviously. I don't trust Francine at all. Essentially, what Margaret ends up saying during these flashbacks is that her son is worth more to her than any of her friends. And so she does not care if she loses a couple of people along the way to find her son. 100%. 100% she is doing and saying the right thing. This is idiotic. I get it. I get it. Because the other scene is like kind of like a wrap-up scene after this. Where like her and her husband are talking and they're heading to the train station. I get it. It seems like at this point, her trust with her husband is broken. And that's why I think their marriage doesn't last after this point, as we know. But I think the fact that he like pushed back so much with her when she's trying to like figure out who kidnapped their son, the fact that he's so willing to be like, no, our friends are great. They would never. But like, maybe you're to blame, my wife. I don't know, dude. I think there was trouble in that marriage long before this came along. Durga says I would have crashed out if I saw them flirting. My baby is gone. Francine build was similar to the person at the press conference for Jamie. Oh. Francine's build was similar to the person at the press conference for Jamie. I don't know that they would have introduced Francine if she wasn't going to play a bigger part. Know what I mean? I feel like it's Francine. We know it's a she because of an interaction that Jamie has with Margaret a little bit later. If we're to still believe that this is even Jamie, I don't know, dude. I'm still not 100% sold. But I will say I liked him more in this episode than I've liked in any other previous episode. He wasn't in it very much. So that might have had something to do with it. He was only in it for like 2 scenes. All right. So, Margaret goes to check in on Jamie. He's out in the lobby because they're working on, this case for Trent. Obviously, it's got to do with the PD. Like, Jamie can't be involved in this. And she sees that he's drawing, and he drew her, and it is arguably a beautiful pencil drawing. It's gorgeous. And she says, like, you have a real talent. This is a really big deal that you can do this. And he's like, I guess in 13 years you can learn a lot. So she's like, oh, someone taught you how to do this. And he just says, well, and then Margaret gets called in to the meeting with Trent. So Durga says this is the first episode I didn't hate Jamie. They gave him a skill, like it erases everything. Yeah, like finally they did some character development on him, and I'm like, oh, maybe he's not so bad. And he says just started the episode. Oh my god, a Heather jump scare. For real. For real. For real. She comes out of nowhere. Surprise. um okay, so all right, so then Trent finds out that Gabby had already asked M&A to like kind of start working on this case like before Trent even asked them to do it. I think she was kind of respecting his wishes on it and kind of holding off, but what they come to find out is that there were two boys, Lawrence and Adam, that both went missing. Unfortunately, their mother Danielle was deported back to Haiti after he went missing, and she died in 1987 without ever knowing what happened to her son. Um, okay, so according to Sir, all these children were taken from the Southeast DC area in 1984, and so they pulled yearbooks from that year for the area to try to figure out. They were able to ID one other student. His name was Enrico Teodoro, nickname Teddy. And he was taken when he was 10 years old, and he went to the same school as Lawrence. And they still have to go through all the rest of the yearbooks. Durga says Trent is hot. Like this episode, he was magically delicious. Not hello, nurse. Durga, come on. You dirty dog. I can't. I can't. I love it though. Keep doing it. Okay. All right. So Zeke and the crew are going to go through all the yearbooks. Trent and Gabby are going to go track down Janet Tyson. She's a woman who wrote an article about this story of these brothers of Lawrence going missing 40 years ago. She's 81 and she lives in a retirement home in Maryland. So they head up there. She is the sweetest, cutest little old lady, and she's like, um, she talks about how she has like a late husband and how he was so dapper, and Trent is so handsome and strong, and it's like a whole thing. And anyway, she wrote the article about Lawrence Johnson. They ask her about it. She says she remembers him. She usually wrote about politics, but Lawrence's mother came to her, and so she wrote the article. She reached out to the police. She spoke to James Trent, the detective. He refused to go on the record, but he intimated that other children had gone missing. And she said so in her article, but the editor took it out. And then she also wrote a follow-up article that her editor refused to publish. She claims, I don't know if this is actually true based on what we find out later, but she wrote it about Lawrence's brother Adam because he also went missing. This I know, Durga. This case made me cry. I think I cried on like 4 separate occasions. It was a lot. It was a lot. So the editor of the paper was sure that the mother was lying to avoid deportation, which is why she didn't want to publish any more of the articles. But Tyson goes on to say, like, I knew she wasn't lying. And then there's like there's like a phone call is received during this time from Sir. I don't know why Gabby answers it, but she does. You just like don't even let him back in, but she does. And he says, You're already on the phone, Gabrielle, aren't you? Must say I'm disappointed. Took you longer than I thought to take this first step, but you're finally on the path to learning the truth about your heavy boots and his father. Of course, if you want to skip to the ending, just come and see me. And she says that is never going to happen, and she hangs up. Um, they're thrown because they're like, how did Sir find out like where we were? And as it turns out, the receptionist from the facility admitted to being given $1,000 10 days ago, along with a note that said to contact her if I ever showed up, as in Gabby. And everyone's like, 10 days ago, Sir was in jail. So it had to have been Christian, but was it? Because there's an additional accomplice, I think. So we're unsure. Um, okay, I unfortunately really have to pee. So I'm going to run off to the bathroom. In the meantime, I'll give you something to look at. Um, so that it's not so boring. And I'll be back shortly. I knew it was going to come back too fast. Man, okay, I tried. I tried so hard to go so fast. Okay. All right, hold on. Let me get what I had going up here again. Okay, so all right, so they find out about this person that tipped off Sir. Um they don't want to worry about that. They're like, we have other things to deal with right now. I'm not worried about Sir right now. Good lord, something's coming up on my computer. Okay. Um all right. So, Margaret's also concerned during this whole time because Jamie has left the building. She doesn't know where he is, and he didn't tell her where he was going to go. He just leaves. So, she's concerned about it. He's 20 years old. So, everyone else is like, it's fine. They'll come back. It's not a big deal. Um excuse me. What's happening to me? All right. So then Zeke is looking into others from the yearbooks. They were able to ID another person, Alondra Rojas. She's from Venezuela. And Alejandra Rojas was taken at 7. Um, and so that's 4 kids, all from other countries, all taken just before their parents were deported, attending the same school. So they decided to go take a look at the principal because, as Lacey states, 2 years before these children went missing, the Supreme Court handed down a landmark ruling in Plyler versus Doe, which struck down a statute denying educational funding to undocumented students. So they go to find the principal. Now, this went different than I thought it would. The principal was just like, no, these kids were amazing. I loved these kids. They were great. They were bright. They were super smart. They worked hard in their studies. They spent their free time working on things like teaching themselves Latin. I was not worried about these kids. Um, and he says, still watching the episode in Zeke and Lacey, I swear they better kiss the episode. And I kind of like Trent and the team working together. Yeah, Trent and the team working together was fun. I'm not going to say anything else about like Zeke and Lacey. You'll just have to wait and see. Um, okay, so yeah, so he really liked the kids. He was not like mad about them being there. So automatically it's just like, no, he's off the table. This is not our guy. So Dawn went to go work on some secret lead. And they did ID the last 3 children. So the last 3 children are Haben, Uh, the way they said, I thought it was Niabil, but they said it differently than that, and so I'm very sorry if I'm butchering it. And then Brandon. And those kids went to 3 different schools. They did not go to the same school that Lawrence and Adam did. MO is still the same. So all exceptional students from undocumented parents. And we just need to figure out where it is that they intersected. So they end up talking to a woman named Arsima. She is Habin's mother. Um, and she just says, like, thank you so much. It's been 39 years. I've been looking for my daughter. She moved out back to the US. She was deported. She then worked on entry of the United States again and is in the United States legally in Indianapolis, working on looking for her daughter, while I'm sure just living. Um, and yeah, so now Arsima does say that she did talk to Detective Trent and he did listen, which I think is a key component of this. But then 2 days later, I was deported anyway, and it took me over 10 years, but I finally returned. And I know it sounds crazy that I'm still searching after all this time, but she has to still be alive. My heart, if she were dead, it would have stopped. Um, Now, Haben, his mother, kept an entire storage unit full of Haben's stuff in DC in case she needed to go back for it. And so the team goes and gets all of that stuff and brings it back. Now, this is around the time that we figure out, like, where the heck has Don been? Gabby's mad. She's like, where have you been? He's like, we've got to talk about something. And so he says, like, look, this case has been bugging me. How did Sir find out about this? How did Sir find out about this case? And Trent's like, well, he wanted leverage against me. And he's like, yeah, but he could have found something more recent than this. Like, why did he dig so far back? And he's like, instead he has photos, case information from almost 40 years ago. And then Gabby's like, oh, we have to dust the photos for prints. Don already did. Guess what? Sirs and James Trent. Crazy. Crazy. So that means that Hugh Evans broke into James Trent's house. So Detective Trent's father, the original Detective Trent, original recipe, broke into his house. Now, Trent's dad is pretty pissed, like, because obviously his son is investigating him. So he's just like, hey, look, I'm just trying to follow the evidence. I want to see where it leads. You know, tell us what happened. And so James Trent says, in 1984, your mom and I were preparing to start a family. Now, believe me, knowing I was about to become a father, nobody wanted to solve this case more than me. And then Gabby's like, no, this is 7 kids. This is cases. And he's like, no, this is something serial. This was like a serial thing. This is one case. He said, a witness told me the last time they saw Lawrence's brother Adam was at a toy store owned by a guy named Walter Dawkins. And so then they were like, okay, well, did you investigate this guy? And he's like, oh, yeah, I investigated him. There was nothing on him, but like I could tell he was hiding something. So I got a warrant. We found the coat that Adam was wearing the day he went missing. And we found 200 grams of cocaine. So I put him away. Then they're like, okay, but like, why did you keep the photos then of the children if you knew that you caught the guy? And he's like, well, Dawkins said he was innocent. And so I kept the photos in case any other children went missing, but they didn't at that time in the same like MO. And then, he's like, you should have trusted your department to investigate this. You should have not have come to an outside source to investigate this story. But it is what it is. And he goes, and Mallory's pissed because I told your commanding officer. So now Trent has to go explain this to Mallory, played by our favorite Bill Kelly. Okay, Andy says on commercial break, and the fact Sir called twice to get Gabby is so delusional. He is wildly crazy. It's wild to see. It is just wild to see. Okay, so they have all the stuff from the storage unit. They found a couple things. The biggest piece of evidence being a VHS tape that they dropped off at Zeke's, and Zeke is trying to pull off data from the tape. So Trent does find Dawkins. This is the time in which Zeke and Don have their little heart to heart. So there's resolution algorithm happening, whatever the heck that is. Um, anyway, so they see that the video is ready and they look at it and they're like, I'm not seeing Haven, so I'm guessing she's behind the camera, but they're seeing all of the other kids in the video. So this is like the link that ties them together. It's like Nabil, Brandon, Alejandra, they're all in the video. So like this is the link between them. Then it does cut over to Sir at the prison. He has a visitor. It's Heather. It's Heather. Okay, so here's what is said between the two of them. I'm just going to read it. Clearly not who you were expecting. Allow me to formally introduce myself. He was like, I know who you are. Do you? She asks. You are the woman my brother Christian allegedly shot. Excuse me. Excuse me again. I'm so sorry. So he's like, and she says, some say he was acting on your orders. I'm Heather Tolan. And he's like, what do you want? She says, this is the part where you shut up and listen if you're as smart as everyone says you are. So I'm not sure. Because I was like, up to this point, I'm like, Heather's his sister. This threw me for a loop. I'm not sure anymore. At the very least, she's so ambitious that she is not worth us knowing. We skip back to Trent and Mallory talking to Dawkins. Mallory does not want to hear it. But Trent is like, look, I want to know. I'm willing to listen. Tell me what happened. Tell me what you have to say. Tell me your side of the story. So here's the story that Dawkins provides. Adam used to stop by my shop, a toy shop, from time to time. No, a customer has money, is what he says when Trent asks, like, oh, so he was a customer. Adam was like, Oliver Twist. I remember for his birthday, I gave him an action figure. The packaging was all broken, so I couldn't sell it. Man, you should have seen his face. And then Mallory's like, the day Adam went missing, the two of you were seen arguing. He's like, we weren't arguing. Adam came to me because he was frightened. And Trent's like, okay, well, who was he frightened of? And he said, he didn't give me a name. But Adam told me that the man offered to reunite him with his brother. So this happened after his brother went missing, Trent asks. He says he was certain that the man had seen him. So we swapped out his jacket for a new one to use as a disguise. I gave him some money and I told him to wait there. I went out, checked around to make sure it was safe for him to go back to where he was staying. And when I came back, he was already gone. I never saw him again after that. And then Mallory's like, well, what about all the drugs we found? And he's like, oh, let me guess. That was planted. And Dawkins does have a look on his face, like as though he's offended by this question or offended by the accusation of him saying this. So I am starting to think that there definitely was planted drugs involved in this. I think James Trent was so sure that this guy had done something that he was willing to do whatever he needed to get him caught, I just don't think that was the case. He says if I am free to go, I would like to leave. I don't want to be here. Durga said this was so fake in my opinion. That's Hugh's annoying, chaotic little sister. You know what? I'm glad we're all still like gunning for that because the storyline feels a little flat if that's not the case. I'd like it to be more intricate, All right. So Trent believes Dawkins. Personally, I believe Dawkins too. And his story hasn't changed since 1984. So, so there's kind of like a back and forth where Margaret and like Gabby are kind of like playing back and forth the questions and kind of talking about like, what would happen. And then Margaret's kind of like, well, why wouldn't they come forward until like, why hadn't they come forward yet? They're adults now. Like they wouldn't have come forward when they became adults. And so it's kind of like, well, we don't really know. We don't really know the whole situation. It makes sense later when we find out what actually happened to them. Gabby says they could have been lied to, like Sir lied to me and told me my dad didn't want me anymore and had moved on without me. Like Jamie's captors must have said to him time and again. That may be what took Jamie so long, why the lost son 7 never did return, not to mention their immigration status. So they're like, well, we've got to find him and figure out what's going on and tell him the truth. So they call Zeke and they get progressions done of all 7 children. Commercial break again, says India, and Sir broke into Trent Sr.'s house. Yeah, I know, right? It's wild. I love that you're watching it live as we're going through it. I love it. Okay, um so then there's like this interaction between Margaret and Jamie. She kind of comes at him hot because she's mad that he left without saying anything. And she's like, I just want you to like tell me what you're doing. And he's like, look, I wanted new clothes. I you were busy. I left and I bought clothes. Like, what's the big deal? And she's like, well, I bought you clothes. What's wrong with them? And he's like, it's not me. It's not my vibe. It's not my thing. And he's like, maybe when I was 6, it would have been, but I'm not that kid anymore. And he's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And she's like, wait, these clothes aren't new though that he's wearing because he went back to his kidnapper's house. He went back. And so she says, you got these from your other, are you still seeing them? And so it's just wild. This is very, very wild to me. All right. So, there's another flashback here, but we're gonna skip over it because we already talked about it. Let's see. Durga says he was been in the wind for 20 years. Starting to think he's been stalking Gabby and Trent a while, separately though. And I'm sure Hugh has known who his father is. What else has he had to do? Yeah, it's true. Get out of here, approved groom. Nobody wants you. Um, Durga then said, I probably would have popped Jamie when I realized he was going back to his captors. That pissed me off hard. I was like, dude, what are you doing? It's crazy. Okay. So they get one of the facial recognition things done. It's for Adam Johnson. He's approximately 46 now. They do facial recognition. Guess what? They find him. His name is Adam Lawrence now. He took his brother's first name as his last name. He's a lawyer. They found him. He was telling the truth. Mr. Dawkins was telling the truth. And he says, without his help, I know I would have been taken too, just like my brother. They were like, you were 7 years old? Like, how did you survive? Because, their mom was deported. He was in the US by himself. And he said, I didn't. Up until I was 18, I must have lived with a dozen families, each of them protecting me and treating me like I was their own. And so they're like, is that why you chose immigration law? Because that's the type of law he got into. He was like, yes, that's exactly why. But he says, but not a day goes by where I don't think about my mom, may she rest, or my brother. He's like, I keep searching for my brother just discreetly. But not having him in my life, not knowing, it's like there's a hole inside of me that just refuses to heal. And then they're like, well, Adam, like, who was the guy that took you, like, tried to take you? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know who he is, but I will never forget his face. And conveniently, we found out earlier in this episode that Jamie has a very useful skill. He can draw. So they have Jamie work with Adam Lawrence to figure out what this guy, who this guy is. So he draws this guy. It's a guy with a high top fade. Once they finish the picture, Margaret's like, I know who that is. It's in the video that Haben had. We have to go back and look at it. They enhanced it. It's on a banner for a program called Andrew's Footprints. It was an aftercare program at one of the schools. And according to Arsma, Andrew's Footprints was a private after-school program for at-risk youth in DC back in the 80s. I did some digging, and it was run by this man, Shane Ingram. Ingram was using the program to find his victims. He apparently started the program after his own son died at age 5. His mission was to give disadvantaged children a safe haven. Adam wasn't part of the program because he was taking Latin after school. So that's why he didn't know Ingram personally, but all the other kids did. And Ingram knew from Lawrence how gifted Adam was. So they're like, well, now we need to find Ingram because we got to find out what happened to these kids. There's no way to talk to him or find him because Shane Matthew Ingram, founder of the charity Andrew's Footprints, died on June 4th, 2021. India said, love this moment between Don and Zeke. It is the sweetest, India. It's so cute. It's so cute. Such a nice um show of growth in their friendship, in their relationship. Okay, so they read the obit and it says Ingram is survived by his wife of 42 years, acclaimed journalist Janet Tyson, the sweet little old lady from the nursing home. Here's what she proceeds to say. I am going to read this because the guffaw that I guffawed when I heard this, because I was like, this is a wild thing to say out loud. I'm just going to let you sit with it because it's insane. Janet says, those kids' children were exceptional, but their talents would have been wasted if they had been shipped back to those impoverished jungles that they came from. I was like, bro, are you serious right now? Gabby's like, you had no right to do that. Also, you obviously know nothing about their home countries because like they came from all over the world. What are you talking about? And it was wild. Anyway, so they're like, why'd you even write the article to begin with, you idiot? And and she's like, well, Adam Lawrence's mother was really persistent and it would have been suspicious if I hadn't done it. So I had to. And then Trent's like, well, your foundation's financials were public record and you sold the kids for $10,000 a piece to other families. And so Trent's like, you may have one foot in the grave, but the other foot I'm putting in prison, which was a great line. I loved that. He's like, but first, you're going to help us find these people. So what we get after this now is kind of like a montage. We get like a lot of work happening to pull all these people together. So what they're going to do is they're trying to find all 7 of the children. Um, they're going to bring them in. They're going to have them meet with the birth parents that they have or their family if they have them. They found most of the people. There's trails that have run cold for some of them. Including for Lawrence. Now, they do the press conference. And so this is what Gabby says during that, which I think just shines like a lot of light on why and what was happening. Okay, so 39 years ago, 7 exceptional young children living here in DC were taken from their families. The lure the captor used was a lie. These children were undocumented and were told that their birth families were no good, that their parents had been deported and chose to leave them behind because they were unworthy and unloved. These children were forced to live with this poisonous lie, all the while feeling like my friend Adam here did, like there was something crucially missing from their lives. As this is happening, a little girl sees a picture on TV and yells for her mommy and daddy to come and says, Daddy, you're on TV. It's Lawrence. This part made me cry. I couldn't handle it. Um, you just have to go back and watch it because honestly, that I cannot do that scene justice in words because the acting in that scene is just really phenomenal. It's like a really great piece of acting. So the look, the gasp, the trying to catch your breath, the tears coming. It was really, really good. So I encourage you to go back and watch it if you haven't. At least that clip. Um Anyway, they're waiting for all these people to come. Everyone shows up. It's beautiful moments. People are reunited. Arsima's reunited with Haben. We get to see Teddy and his father reunited. Adam is waiting, and Gabby says, we never heard from Larry, but I'm so glad that you all came because Adam's there with his family. He's got his wife and his 2 kids. And he looks past Gabby and sees Lawrence coming in with his daughter and his wife. And oh god, I'm gonna get teary-eyed. They introduce each other to their families. They're so happy to meet each other. And Don looks at Gabby and goes, "We're going to need a bigger wall." Um, India says, "Commercial break again. Heather and that huge showdown was funny. AF still hate Trent Sr." I do. Yeah, Trent Sr. is rough. So Trent Sr. does show up during this part and says, "Just stopping by to say good work. Mistakes were made, obviously." And he's like, "I want you to know that I never planted any evidence." And she's like, Gabby's like, "If you want absolution, do not talk to me. Either talk to your son or talk to this guy over here that you ruined his life." And she's talking about Dawkins. Dawkins came to this event and gets to see Adam for the first time since he lost Adam that day. And they're all hugging. And this is where I cried again. Adam's like, "You saved my life." Um, he's like, "There's not a day that goes by that I hadn't prayed over yours." Ooh, ooh, it's getting me. It's getting me again. Um, it was just really beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. At this point, we get another flashback, and then we do get a flash forward. We get a scene of Jamie talking to Margaret, and he's like this. He finally got to be a part of the work in this episode, which was nice to see. Um, Weirdly, and because I hate him normally, but I don't know, I liked it here. And he says, like, "This is like being a part of this was indescribable to me." And she's like, I know it is." But then she goes on and she says, like, "I've tried really hard to give you space and not pressure you about the people that took you, but I can't do this anymore." And those 7 kids, some of their adopted parents know that their actions were criminal and that they're going to have to pay for that. Just like the monsters who took you are going to have to pay. Please tell me. And he says, "I'm so sorry, Mom, but I can't tell you who she is." And then he leaves. And Margaret takes that little piece of information. So now we've got a couple pieces of critical information. This person is an artist, whether or not professionally they are, at least in talent, capable of art. It's a woman. She knew Jamie when he was young and had access to their home. To me, that's looking like Francine. We're going to find out, I'm sure, soon. Um, then we get the scene with Zeke and Lacey. And then also we get a scene where Trent goes to the prison and is like, "Hey, dude, you were wrong. My family's legacy is a little tarnished because of the implication that drugs were planted, but all good. All good on my end. I don't know what you thought was going to happen." And he says, this is what Sir says, "The planting of the evidence was merely the tip of the iceberg. Here, I need you to read this to Gabrielle. Gabrielle, congratulations on reuniting the 7 with their families. As your greatest admirer," my favorite part is that when Trent reads this out loud, he like rolls his eyes. It's phenomenal. "I knew you would succeed. But if you want to learn the truth about the Trent family legacy, only now are you looking in the right direction." And Trent says, "Remember, you must read it to her." So there's something in that clue, that she's going to be able to figure out. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but there's something to that. And he hides it from her, which bothers me. Anyway, as he's getting ready to leave, the door buzzes, and lo and behold, Heather is there to see her client. Because her firm took on Sir. That's why. It's not because she's his sister or anything. Anyway, um, super weird. Her law firm took on Sir as a client and she lobbied to be the one to defend him, which Gabby says is smart because if Heather can forgive Sir, why can't they? Which seems like that would be conflict of interest. I would make an argument for. I think you could get her maybe banned from being his representative. I would make that argument. That I don't know. If I'm the DA and I'm trying to prosecute and this is his defense lawyer, I'm filing a motion to get her removed. That is That's conflict of interest. Anyway, um, that's it. That's the end of the episode. So I have to say this was overall one of the better episodes we've seen in a while. I really enjoyed it. If they could keep it up with this, I'd be so happy. I don't know that that's going to be the way that this goes, but next week's episode will air. It will air next week, Thursday on the 20th. It is called Missing While Witnessed, like witnessed, past tense. It was written by Nikita Demare and um, directed by Keisha Sharp, which I feel like is Keisha Sharp has directed. She directed a Michael G. Peterson episode earlier in the season. She directed Missing While Gabby Mosley. Um, and I think that's the only one that Keisha has done so far. And then Nikita did episode 7 of the first season, which we really enjoyed, which was Missing While Indigenous. And we really enjoyed that one. So, and a new pairing, a new team up of director and writer. So we'll have to see what happens there. But it's, yeah, I hope we stay on this train because this was really good. I really enjoyed this. Again, I'm still going to make the argument these could be darker. I don't know. These could be darker. Some other stuff could happen. There could be some stuff has to be on the line. I'm sorry, but like it's a little too fluffy. This was beautiful fluffy. This was great. This was a good one. This was good fluffy. But we're hitting like fluffy, 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 kind of one right after the other. So could be darker. Come on, guys. You air super late at night. You could do it. SVU touches way darker content than this. And they have been successful for a million years because it's been on forever. Durga says darker and multi-episode arcs. I would love that. I think that would be great. I think that's really the direction that they should go in. I think they could see, if we went more with that like SVU kind of mentality, because again, they did multi-episode arcs. Not always. It wasn't always what they did. It doesn't have to be all the time, but they did do it. And I'm not saying make yourself SVU. You're very much a different show. But look at what you're on air with, and you're losing viewers. So I think maybe it's time to try something new. Indy says agreed. Need it to be a bit grittier and longer arcs too. Yeah, that would be my feedback. Not that they're asking me because they're not, but that's my opinion. That is my opinion on this. I think this could be a really, really, really phenomenal show. This is a great show, but this could be a phenomenal show if they would do that. But anyway, I love that you guys were here. I don't trust Francine either. Girl, none of us do. Screw Francine. Francine is Famy's mother. His new mother. His other mother. I am so thankful for you guys being here. I'm so sorry Takira wasn't here. She is currently moving. I hope that we'll see her next week and we can kind of get back on to our regular situation, but she's had a lot going on, so we'll just give her time. Durga, it's so well put. Mark Paul has been trying to have a hit for 20 plus years. He deserves better writing. I love that. He does. He does. He's so talented. India says, and Jamie is pissing me off so much. For real, girl. For real. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you for being here. I liked it. I loved it. I want some more of it. I don't know why I did that. But I have to go. I'm gonna go make dinner and enjoy my weekend. I hope that you do the same. I love you, sweet, perfect angel babies, so much. Thank you for being here. And I hope you join us again next week. Same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my channel. And yeah. And also, Durga, I'm so sorry because you were the one who requested that I get the studio set up earlier so that you have the link to get the notification. And I'm so sorry. I just completely forgot about it this week. My schedule is just off this week. So I promise I will have it for you next week though. Promise. But I hope to see you lovely, lovely people next week. I will see you around. Have a good weekend. Bye.